Remember to do social stuff at the end of that.
Yeah. So, you ready to hit that
Ready to go whenever you
records? Yeah, man. Press recorder. Ready to go. You ready, Claire?
I'm ready. I don't know what's going to come up.
We're just gonna have a conversation. It's just gonna be cool. We're just gonna have a bit of fun. Bits and pieces. All right, Claire, man. Thanks for coming to do this.
Thank you.
That's all right. I was doing a bit of research about your singing and stuff like that, and I came across some of your stuff on SoundCloud.
Okay,
It's-
are you going to play it?
No, I'm not going to play it for the podcast. No, I'm not going to do that to you. But it's really good. You've got a cracking voice.
That stuff I recorded though, I mean, that was things that I learned to produce when I got really ill and I needed to, so what we was talking about.
Yeah.
I learned to actually produce in my bedroom, and that's the stuff that I learned. So when I'm singing that, I can hear that I wasn't well at the time when I did it. But yeah, that's my first attempt at music production that I learned from YouTube.
Well, so you did all of that yourself?
I did it all myself.
Yeah, it sounds really good.
Yeah.
Because the one thing, like, I do a bit of music production, but the one thing I find the hardest is mixing. Above anything else. Recording, you can get it down, but getting it to sit right in the mix is so difficult.
Well, it is for me being profoundly deaf on the one side. So I think I get really, probably more than someone normal. I go over things. I'm a bit of a perfectionist because I don't hear in stereo. So half of the mix I'm not really hearing. So I'm having to guess majority of the time.
Right, so, I mean, you have no idea whether your mix actually sounds right or not.
Nope.
So it's a complete gamble, yeah?
It really is a gamble. So I have to rely on other people listening just to see if it's any good, because I don't hear it in stereo. So, I mean, half of it when you pan it, I don't know if it's sounding right on the other side of the mix because I don't hear it.
Has it always been like that?
Yeah. But, I mean, probably growing up, I never thought of it in that way. But, yeah, I mean, only through music production I probably realised that being deaf is not great when it comes to mixing and mastering. But, yeah, I mean, I think I've got used to it, if anything. I got used to doing it, but yeah, relying on someone else for feedback is the downside, if anything. Yeah.
So, when did you know that you were deaf in that 1 year?
I was born deaf, so I was actually born deaf.
But you didn't know about it until later years, was it?
Oh God, I must have had at least 8 attempts from like the age of 6 going to see if anything could be done. But yeah, I always came back saying I was profoundly deaf. But I never thought of it as a problem.
Right.
I never saw it as a problem because I never come across anything in my life which made it a problem.
Yeah. Okay.
Only until it became a problem when I was 30. And that's when my music career started failing because of my deafness. But yeah, it's never been a problem because I never saw it as a problem, really.
No, I suppose to you it was just natural, really, because you never had the hearing, so you never really, in effect, missed it, I suppose, because you never knew what it was like to have.
I mean, the only time that it would ever come up is if people had to walk on the left side, because I couldn't actually hear them. So the only people who really knew was boyfriends.
Right, okay.
Because they had to walk on the other side of me.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I didn't want to make it a problem because I never saw it as a problem. So yeah, loads of people never knew about my deafness until now, actually, when they ask me, well, why don't you sing anymore? I said, well, I actually can't because being deaf on the one side is a problem for my posture.
Right. Yeah. So you've been singing a long time then?
A very long time.
How long's a long time?
I was 11 when I started, and I'm now 39, and I retired last year.
Right. Okay. What?
So
Completely?
Completely. Yeah. I've not been on stage in a whole year. Not done anything musical in a whole year, and to be honest, I don't miss it.
Right. Okay.
I actually don't miss it because I probably now see that I was a massive perfectionist.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe quite unhealthy when when I look at it. Yeah, my voice was absolutely everything. It's how I earned my money. It's it was my job, and I don't think I was healthy, if I'm being honest.
In what way do you mean by that?
Well, if you call steaming 5 times a day, honey, lemon, and ginger right throughout the day.
Yeah. So explain what this is, because I never heard of this before. I'm not a singer, so maybe I wouldn't know. But explain what steaming actually is.
It's you just well, it's an actual face steamer. So it's electric face steamer, and you put water in the bottom of it, and it steams your whole face, but it just lubricates your vocal cords, if anything. So it keeps my vocal cords lubricant and just ready for me to sing. So it's they're not dry.
Is that common practice in singers, or is it?
Personally, I think at the top end it's really common. I think maybe just amateurs, they still drink their alcohol and they don't really care for doing it. But because I've always put myself at the top to be the best that I possibly could, I looked for absolutely every single thing I could to make me the best.
Right.
Which was steaming,
Yeah.
honey, lemon and ginger, no smoking, no shouting, no going to the beach because it dry up my vocal cords.
The beach would dry up your vocal cords? What, because of the air?
Yeah.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So to be honest, I didn't really have a life because my voice was my absolute world.
Yeah.
So yeah, when I started to develop the cough,
Yeah.
which led to me not being able to sing anymore.
Right, okay.
That's it was hard.
Right.
Even though I was such a perfectionist, it was really difficult.
I think being a perfectionist can be, it can be a good thing, I think, and a bad thing. I mean, I talked about this with who I run the studio with, and he always says to me, you can be a perfectionist if you want, but you really just need to get stuff out there.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah. Well, I have a problem with it when I do my music. Anything that I
Yeah.
do, I like it to be perfect, and but he's right in that sense. Is that you've just got to get something out,
Yeah, and the difference in me now is that I just now do my new job. My new life is completely different. I just do it. But I had too many old patterns from I think from starting so young, from 11 years old. And probably having a dad that was, I wouldn't say massively critical, but he was very critical in the sense of he liked things to be perfect.
Okay.
So I think it maybe just was embedded in me a little bit that I had to be perfect. And if I didn't make someone like cry when I did my job, I didn't think it was good enough. So the impact for me was I wanted to see that I was doing the best I possibly can. And probably, like I said, maybe unhealthy. It was not, everything wasn't enjoyable. And I had a conversation earlier on with another girl in music who said the exact same thing, that it's quite unhealthy sometimes when you're a musician because you're actually doing it for everyone else rather than yourself.
Yeah.
You're doing it for an agent, you're doing it for the audience, you're doing it for your parents or for everyone that supports you.
Yeah.
Sometimes you forget that you just got to do it for yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happened with me. I realized I didn't want to do it anymore.
So let's go back to when you were 11, you said, when you first started singing.
Yeah.
What kind of things were you doing back then to kick off your career?
Well, it actually started. My sister worked in a solicitor's and he owned a recording studio.
Okay.
And yeah, I just went for a little blast. And in the evening, then I actually did my first show. So I was probably catapulted into it and not really realizing from that very day that was the rest of my life.
So you've just gone to the studio with this
Yep.
solicitor, and what did you record? Just was it like just a
I
backing
actually
track?
recorded Pearl's a Singer.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Pearl's a Singer, Elkie
Okay.
Brooks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was meant to just be a little bit of fun.
Yeah.
And then in the evening, it was like, great, like let's get her on the stage. We got a showcase tonight, so do you want to perform? So then my parents saw me on the stage, and then it was okay. Let's find an agent. And
Right, okay.
I was actually out there from 11 years old.
So I mean, as an 11-year-old, some 11-year-olds know what they want to do with the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
Some don't. Was it that you knew then, or was it that your parents saw you and thought, "Wow, she can sing"?
God, I go back to like 7 years old. My dad's birthday is on the 1st of January, so we used to have huge New Year's Eve parties. Most of Fleur de Lis Rugby Club would actually be back at the party.
Yeah.
And I used to march into the middle of the room with my little karaoke and, give full shows, coming away with like £80 at 7 years old from, I'm not going to sing unless you give me the money. But
Wow,
so
that's the way to do it.
such a young age, it was just embedded in me.
Right.
And I did love doing it. Absolutely loved performing. So yeah, that was just the first time I'd really been on stage.
Right.
And took it seriously. And then my parents was like, okay, this is maybe what we see her doing. So yeah, it was never pushy parents.
Yeah.
They never forced me to do it. It was absolutely in me to do it as well. But yeah, that was the start for me, 11.
So what happened? Did you get an agent after that show? Was that what happened?
Yeah, and then I actually went on to do competitions. So I was
Okay.
constantly winning competitions at 12 and constantly out doing it to when I went on to college as well, studying performing arts for 3 years, gigging constantly through it as well. So it just from 11, it was non-stop.
And as far in your head, was you thinking this is what I'm going to do from 11? Did you think I don't want to do anything else, or was it that it was just sort of a progression from when your parents saw you sing, got you an agent, and then you just found yourself sort of rolling with the bull?
I think it was. I had convinced myself it was for me, even though I had this little part of me. I went to Careers Day and I wanted to join the RAF. I
Right,
actually
okay.
wanted to fly jets.
Wow. Okay.
And if it hadn't have been for my deafness, I probably would have signed up. But being profoundly deaf on the one side, they told me there's no point, I'll fail the medical. So it was almost like I had to just go back to, okay, I'm going to have to go back to singing then. But yeah, I mean, if I hadn't have been born profoundly deaf, the RAF was actually what I wanted to do.
Right.
I wanted
okay.
to fly jets.
It's a massive difference. It's a
Huge.
massive difference
Yeah,
between singing and
and
rap.
I still have those moments today when I see the jets and I get really emotional because I just wasn't able to do it. So it's one of those things for me. Like, I mean, for me, one of the things this year is I want to get a pilot's license. That's what I would love to absolutely do. But
You're able to fly with your
it's
hearing?
completely different to
Right, okay.
to being like in the RAF.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not so much the hearing's the problem for flying. It's just they won't accept anybody that's got a hearing problem.
I wouldn't have
Okay.
passed the medical
Fine,
to actually
okay.
get in.
All
Yeah.
right.
But yeah, that was the other thing. That was the only other thing I wanted to do in my life, but it wasn't for me. So yeah, I just automatically went back to music and went straight on to college after school, and yeah, mapped out for me really.
So when did you think that when you were doing music and gigging and all the performances you were doing that you thought, wow, this is going to be, I wouldn't say a money-making career because you've obviously were making money when you were 7 by the sounds of it by having, your family's friends pay you. But when did you think that there's a real opportunity here to make it big?
When I got scouted for the Eurovision.
Okay.
So at 17, I got scouted for the Eurovision Song Contest, and I actually was the person that was going to represent them. But I had signed management a couple of months before. I just unfortunately signed with the wrong management because they've just done an absolute nightmare, and they lost me the opportunity to represent the UK in the Eurovision.
So how did that come about then, that offer to do that?
A local person had just recorded me. I was 17 at the time, so it was just a little recording studio in a house. It was nothing major. And they'd sent it off and got in touch with me. So to be honest, I can't tell you the ins and outs because it happened so quickly. So I just recorded, and it was up the Burn actually. It was near where you're actually from.
Right, okay.
Yeah, it happened really quickly. So before I knew it, I was up in Bristol recording the song, and had to then speak with my management and say, well, this is what's happened. What do you think? And yeah, so that was probably the first time I realized maybe, okay, I can get into the music industry. But then my taste of the music industry with management happened at the same time. So I realized as much and as quickly as you can get something, you can also lose it.
Right.
So I wouldn't say I was jaded earlier on, but I realized pretty earlier on that it's the type of industry that as quickly as you can get something, you can lose it as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know we had a conversation before today, just a rough chat about what happened. You said it was pretty cutthroat. At what point did you try to break into that industry properly? Then I know you had the Eurovision.
Yeah.
That seemed to be more of a. You tell me if I'm wrong, but someone came to you and said, "Do you fancy this for the Eurovision?" And then you got to Bristol to record. When did you think that? Wow, I'm definitely going to do this. In the sense of this is going to be my full career, because maybe it's just me, but when I was growing up, I always wanted to be in a band. I was in bands when I was younger, but as you sort of reach adulthood, you tend to sort of think, well, actually, this isn't really working for me now. I just lean towards more of a normal job,
Yeah.
No, okay.
It never ever occurred to me to not follow that path.
Right.
Like that's again going back to being an absolute perfectionist. It probably was because I was so tunnel visioned as well. And I think to be in music seriously, you probably do have to have that mentality as well, that you're very tunnel visioned, you're very focused. So for me, I finished college and just turning 19, I booked a ticket and I flew to LA.
So tell me a little bit about this decision then.
Sometimes I can't believe I actually did these things when I say it.
Well, it's a huge decision, isn't it? I mean, you're not going over the bridge to like Bristol, or you're not going to Bournemouth or somewhere like that in the UK. You were going right across the world. So
my parents cancelled that ticket as well. So when I actually booked the ticket, which was with my own money, so it was, I'd worked to actually, I knew I wanted to go to LA, and I worked my butt off with it was my own money. I sold my car to make sure that I could go, and my parents cancelled my ticket.
So Tell me a little bit about the thought process then between.
I don't think there was one.
So it was just a snap decision, was it, or?
I'd gone on a fly drive 2 years prior to that, so my parents had
Okay.
taken me and my younger sister on a fly drive. And if I'm being honest, I never really heard of Hollywood and LA, and I don't know why, because I wanted to be in music, but I'd never really heard of it. But as soon as I got to LA, from San Francisco we drove down, as soon as I reached LA, I just felt like it was where I needed to be.
Right.
And when we left, I was like, I'm going back. I have to. So that was my goal. Finish college, work my butt off to earn my money to get me back to LA, which was 2 years later that I actually booked my tickets. My parents cancelled them because they said, you cannot go back to that place by yourself. It is on the other side of the world. You have no contact. You don't know what you're doing. So it was friends of theirs who knew friends just outside of LA in Ventura, and that was the only reason that I could rebook.
What drew you to the place then? So you've gone on this holiday and.
I just felt like there was something about it. I didn't come across anyone in music there. We didn't really leave Santa Monica, to be honest. Well, we went to Rodeo Drive and my dad played up, so we couldn't go in any of the shops.
Right.
But then I was dressed in Umbro shorts and like Umbro t-shirts, so it was not Hollywood, LA at all.
No.
But yeah, so it was just something I felt. It just felt like I needed to go back there. And to be honest, it was the best decision I ever made, because it threw me into the real music industry.
Right. So you've gone on this holiday, you've come home, and you've decided, all right, I'm going to book a ticket and I'm going.
Yeah.
Your parents cancelled the first ticket.
They did.
How did you persuade them to let you go second time around?
I had a divas drop.
Right, okay.
As you do. Yeah, I mean, they did not want me going. Probably as well because when you're really from like the valleys, you're maybe a little bit naive to the industry. You haven't really left Wales. Even though I used to go back and forth London at that time, as you post your demos, you know, through to the doors of the record labels and the publishing companies, you think you're getting into the industry. I mean, they can't listen to your stuff, but it's just what you end up doing. So me and my mum would always drive back and forth to London. So that was my taste of the industry. So the fact that I wanted to get on a plane and go to LA, where it's one of the craziest places in the world for the music industry, now I understand my parents' reaction. Back then it was like, why are you not letting me go? Like, what's wrong with you? So now I understand it. Now I'm older. But yeah, I mean, so the fact that I had to go and pretty much, you know, stay with a family and be chaperoned, I understand now. I can see it.
Yeah.
But at the time I didn't, because I was so hungry just to get on in music.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was the best decision.
So what did you do when you got there? What was the plan? Or was there no plan?
Probably didn't have a plan. I just thought, I'm going to knock on doors and see what the industry's about. Yeah, I don't think you ever have a plan, really. When you're young, you just think about, I want to be famous, I want to be in the industry, and I'm just going to go and see what's like. Probably like every other person that gets into LA, they have the same mentality that it's just about getting signed and getting into the industry. I didn't really have a plan, if I'm being honest.
Because a lot of things you probably see in the mainstream are, you hear stories of people who give up everything and go out there to try to make it in LA, but end up waiting tables or being, what do they call those things with the cars? Like they take the car chauffeurs or whatever they are.
Yeah.
And they never really quite get anywhere. So was it a benefit to you that you went out there, or was it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the difference with those people is, you've got a visa situation as well, though.
Okay.
And at the time, you had September the 11th.
Right. Okay.
So they really had cut down on people getting into the country. So that was a major obstacle for me. So they weren't really given visas. And they needed to know. So it's a good job I actually had a place to stay, because they needed to know where I was staying, and they actually contacted the people that I was going to stay with. So at that time, it worked out well for me. But it also worked out really well that the people I was staying with had a housekeeper who had major contacts in the industry.
Okay.
So I think it was just a blessing in disguise, really, that my parents cancelled it, and I ended up staying with Heidi Malta, who probably made my whole time over the years, not just once, over the years. For a good 10 years I was back and forth LA.
So tell me a little bit about what you actually did when you were there, who you work with, and how you met these people through what was it, a housekeeper you said?
Housekeeper.
Contacts?
I'm really embarrassed that the people I was working with I didn't even know.
Right, okay.
Who are major artists. But I think because, again, maybe leading a bit of a sheltered life when you come from the valleys, you get very stuck in just what you like. You're not really exposed to the world because you're not in a music industry environment when you're in Wales. No. So I can't remember the lady's name, but she introduced me to who's still one of my really good friends to this day, Nick St. Nicholas from Steppenwolf.
Okay.
Who was an incredible support for me out there. He really took me under his wing and really just gave me a lot of support and knowledge on the music industry, plus their own stories as well. Which was really fascinating, which felt like a lot like my own story, that, you know, you're in a country not really on a long-term visa, trying to get the contacts, trying to be able to stay in this country. So he went through exactly the same story as myself. It's just there was a group of them. So they had more contacts than me at 19 years old in LA trying to make it. But yeah, so Nick was part of a group called World Classic Rockers,
right,
who I later found out I was working in the recording studio with, from the Eagles,
right, okay,
Journey,
wow,
Steppenwolf,
some big players,
Toto, and I didn't know any of them. I'm really ashamed of myself.
Well,
for that.
you know, you talk about coming from Wales, and the Valleys is a bit of a bubble, isn't it? You know, you're not really exposed to many
I
things
was
unless you
calling
go
home, and my Uncle John, he's one of, you know, I adore him. And I was like, Uncle John, like, do you know these people? Like, do you know the Eagles and Steppenwolf? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, oh, well, I'm working with them. And he's like, what? And he's just screaming because he's like, these are my idols. And you're with them. And I really just didn't know them. I mean, I grew up loving Madonna. So I grew up, that was my idol.
Yeah.
So I grew up actually with pop music, not your classic 70s. Which is now some of my most favorite music. I absolutely adore it.
Well, it's been a bit of a revival for lots of people, isn't it? I mean, not many people might know Steppenwolf is, but that's Born to Be Wild is a bigger song, isn't it?
Well, Nick actually wrote it. He's
okay.
singing it as well. So, which again, I only found out when I was in the studio, and I asked him, well, what do you really do? And he played me this stuff, and I was like, whoa, okay, like you're pretty big. But I did not ever think I would meet people in the industry. Probably that was my biggest misconception, that when I went to LA, I just assumed I was going to meet record label owners and publishing companies. I didn't think of the actual artist in the industry. I didn't think of getting to them instead of getting straight to the top, which again is, I think of it and it's like, wow, it just doesn't work that way. These are the lessons I now look at myself and think, wow, you were so naive at 19 years old, going to LA, thinking you was just going to walk into a record label and get signed. Like, yeah, it doesn't happen. It's really cutthroat. But it's, again, I think just where you come from. And especially this was before social media. So you didn't have any social media at this time. So you really were just on your own. There was no way other than calling home on those old tiny little phones. That there was no link to the industry at all. It was, pretty much just learning as you're going along then.
So what kind of stuff when you got to Hollywood and you meet these people and you put in touch with them? Were you recording? Were you playing? What were you doing?
Yeah, I was writing. So I was actually writing with Nick and, you know, some of the plays in the studio as well. But I was introduced to Rusty Miller, and I still adore that man to this day.
Explain who that is for people.
So Rusty actually used to work. He was in a band, which I didn't get the name of. I should have got the name.
That's all right.
So he was signed to Warner. We're talking back in the 80s now. And he used to tour with Bon Jovi, Guns N' Roses, some of the top bands back in the 80s. And he really became one of my biggest supporters. But because he didn't work in the industry anymore, he couldn't get me my visa. So I was with the lawyers and everything trying to stay there. But yeah, so Rusty took me to I got to the record labels, actually got to them. And before the day I was flying home, I actually sat down with Sony Records. in a meeting, played them my demos, and there was one song in particular, and he said, bring me 5 of those and you've got a deal.
Right,
You'll be
okay.
back here. I was flying out the next day
Right.
because my visa was actually up. So when I'd arrived home, Rusty had called me on my phone and he's like, where are you? I said, I'm back in Wales. And he was like, no, we need 5 of these songs. Like, we've got you a deal. And I was like, I'm back in Wales. And this is probably why I loved LA, for the fact that you could have just gone into a studio and worked with someone who could have done 5 of those songs for you. But I was back in Wales. There was nobody here that was capable of doing 5 of those songs.
Right.
So again, that's the difference between being in a place where there's opportunities and there's no opportunities. So I couldn't just jump back on a plane because I'd had my 3 months at that time.
Right. Okay.
So I would have had to have waited to have got back to LA, because at that time again with visas, it was just a really impossible time because of September the 11th. So yeah, it's not that the opportunities were never there. It was wrong place, wrong time.
It was timing. It's a lot
Absolutely.
of the time. A lot of the time for people, that's what it is.
Yeah.
So that, I'm guessing, nothing came of that because you couldn't get back there
at that time. Yeah, they would not let you back into the country because of September the 11th.
Right.
And it was hard enough getting in the first time. So yeah, I couldn't fly back up. Plus as well, there was no one here to help me record or even write the music that they wanted.
What kind of music was that? Like, was it, because you I won't say you specialize in country, but you're more country based.
That came later.
Right,
so it
okay.
was very it was ballad pop rock style.
Right, okay. Right.
And yeah, that's what they wanted to try and, they wanted to try and make me a new Celine Dion. That's what they were trying to make me. That's what Rusty was trying to do as well.
Yeah.
But again, where you found those type of songwriters, I wasn't massive into my songwriting at that time,
right, okay.
or music production. So yeah, it was just that moment where I could not find the people to write and produce with, where they actually thought the songs were good enough, because the song actually came from the writers with Eurovision.
Right,
so
okay,
it was at the top level, but I couldn't get back to them because then it was the cost of everything as well.
Yeah, I don't anticipate that it's cheap to go and chasing a career in the music industry. Nope. So in terms of what happened in LA, you were back and forth there, yeah?
Yep, for a good 10 years back and forth LA.
Were you doing different things every time you were going back and forth, or was it you were going back there for work with particular people, or
writing? So I got into the actual songwriting side of things as well.
Okay.
But yeah, gigs, songwriting, but not only. When I came home from LA, I moved straight to London. Nick had actually advised me, go home and work in the music industry, learn your craft.
Yeah.
So as soon as I came home from my first visit of LA, I moved straight to London and found a job in a record label.
Okay.
Because I just thought it was essential to understand that if I wanted to get into the music industry, I needed to be able to talk music industry as well.
Sure.
So for a good 2 years, I worked in a label.
So how old were you when you came back to do this in London then?
I was 20 when I moved to London.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I actually, for me, it was just invaluable because I didn't know that the music industry worked that way. It's one of those misconceptions again. You're just gonna get a deal. You're gonna, get signed. You're gonna become famous. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard grafting. It's a lot of letdowns. And I actually, working in a label, I got to see the other side.
Right.
That you are going to be let down, because I had to do it to a lot of, like at that time, they'd be sending the discs through the door. So you'd be picking them up and you'd have to listen to them, then send back letters saying, yeah, sorry, great CD, but it's not what we're looking for. So I got to experience the other side of what I was trying to do myself. So I was trying to send my own material, and then I turned out to be the person that was sending the rejection letters.
Right, okay. So that is two different sides of it then, yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's where I started to learn the industry, that as much as you want it, on the other side, you actually then get to be that person that can see what you're doing, to me, essentially, because I was the person sending them off and getting the rejection letters as well, because it's how the industry works, but I needed to see the other side to probably wake me up a little bit and realize you gotta have a few few avenues in the industry. It's not always just about being a singer.
So when you came back and you were working for this label, was that solely what you were doing, listening to new artists, and then?
I'm still working on mine, but
Okay.
I mean, I was getting to understand the industry then. So yeah, but I was also speaking to newspapers.
Yeah.
So I was doing the PR side of things, the marketing. So I got to learn all the areas within running a record label as
Right,
well.
okay.
So yeah, I would throughout the day. Oh God, I'm sorry.
That's so.
I'm waving my hands a bit too much.
Oh, sorry. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, so I would actually talk to, I'd be sending the press kits off. So I'd be talking to the magazines, the newspapers, the radio stations, and then having to feedback to the artists as well. If they got any press, if their song had been added to any radio stations. A lot of the time, again, it's hard work.
Yeah.
Trying to get the placements, if anything. So I was just learning this is how the music industry works, because I didn't know. Again, it's you take for granted that it's the back end of the industry that gets you somewhere, and I didn't know it. So the advice from Nick was just valid advice, because I was able to get a job and learn the industry, which then led me on to doing my own music.
Was it vastly different being in London to Hollywood? Because the industry, it seems to me, well, it seems when you have artists from America, some artists can break America from all over the world, but bands from London or England can have a real problem. But then vice versa, you might have bands in America that can't make it over here. Is it different?
Well, I saw probably
Seems so.
over a 10-year period
Right,
when I
okay.
first went to LA, and then when I went to Nashville. So the difference is, as social media kicked in, they were more acceptable to British artists.
Yeah.
But it's almost like they were never really exposed to it before social media. So as soon as social media hit, it opened up so many different doors. So it was easier as an artist to then market yourself. They loved everything about the British then. So the difference from when I first went with no social media to then going to Nashville, and then seeing that the British were making such a massive impact. Like if you were British coming into Nashville, everybody knew about you.
Right. Okay.
Everyone, within a couple of days, your name was absolutely everywhere, because another British artist had come into Nashville and they loved it. So it was social media that broke a lot of the barriers on being able to get in as an artist to other countries.
But you were working for the label in London before that, yeah? So how difficult was it?
No social media.
No.
So it was the old way of doing things, which was sending the press releases off, having to physically call. You couldn't send nothing regarding, this is, their Instagram account, this is their Facebook followings. You didn't have any of it. It was nothing at that time. So it was good old learning the music industry. Yeah.
So when you were there, you started your own label, right?
Yeah, that's when I actually started to understand the industry.
Right,
and
okay.
probably when I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this myself. I'm not always going to chase these labels.
Yeah.
So I ended up doing it myself.
Okay.
I did move to Leeds for a year before, after London, where I was working with two other girls. So we were building the label, we were building the brand, exactly what we wanted to do. And then that's when, I recorded my single, and I was like, I'm going to do this.
Okay.
Cost an absolute fortune, because I was an independent artist. I had to find the money to do this myself. So I went back to London where I was shooting my music video. I mean,
they were few and far between back then. We're talking about, what you'll be talking about?
Still no social media at the time.
No, so I mean, the independent labels were few and far between back then. I guess it was probably extremely difficult to try and be a voice when you've got the bigger labels that consume everything effectively, because they can hand the money out to bands and they can say, here's your advance, come with us. I suppose for you it was a little bit different because you were putting your own music through it as well. So how did you talked about financially it was difficult. How difficult overall was it?
Well, I was the artist and I was the record label owner. I was marketing it, I was promoting it, I had a million heads. So I was having to be absolutely every single role and still trying to be creative at the same time. It was really hard, I'm not going to lie, very, very difficult. But because I had an awareness of what to do, that's pretty much where most of of my press came from.
Right.
I kind of was the first person, especially in Wales, to actually release as an independent artist.
Right. Okay.
No one was really doing it at the time. So, that's, to be honest, that's how I got into the industry. My story that was selling was that I was a female in the music industry. I mean, at this time, it was heavily driven by men.
Yeah.
So the fact that I was a female, releasing my own music off my own record label, promoting it myself, that's where a lot of my press came from.
Yeah, well, it's a big deal. It is a big deal. Back then, I mean, it would have been massive even doing it in the city, but to be Welsh as well.
Yeah.
It is a massive deal.
And no social media.
No.
So again, it was at the very beginning of the independent artist phase before, and then when social media started to hit. But yeah, I mean, like, I think it was absolutely daunting, and I still feel like I pay for everything to this day because of how much it actually did cost. And I think this is the biggest misconception in music, that people do think you just release your music and you can do a little video and it's going to get you somewhere. It doesn't.
No.
To actually compete in the industry, it does cost. I mean, my music video alone was 10,000.
I mean, that's crazy. It's crazy back then. It's crazy money.
Yeah,
for
I
a
mean,
music
probably
video.
today it's about £20,000.
Wow.
I had a whole team and I was an independent artist running my own record label. And yeah, I think of it now and I was like, how on earth did I do it?
Yeah.
I was running a full-blown record label. And yeah, I mean, at that time, I managed to get my stuff onto Radio 1. Loads of radio stations. I had so much support with it because of my backstory.
Yeah.
Which was a female trying to release her music in the music industry, off her own record label, in a male-driven environment, really.
Well, anybody who starts probably their own business or starts something like that, you've got to be focused and driven. What was your drive like? What were you think? What was your mindset going into that? To start off your own label, I know from what you've told me you were committed to music, but to start your own label, to go it alone, what was going through your head?
I just wanted to do it. To be honest, I think I've met a few other people I think is quite similar to myself. So driven. I mean, to the point I was only last year I actually had a social life when I had to finish music. So yeah, I mean, you sacrifice so much. And to me, music was absolutely everything, whether that was me performing or business. So anything to do with music was never really just about me singing. It was also being successful running my business as well. So it was not just like, okay, I'm going to be a singer off of this. I also wanted to prove that I could run a business. So yeah, mindset is focus. You have to have ultimate focus when it comes to the music industry if you want to be taken seriously. I think that's the only time opportunities come, because off of that, I probably started the trend with touring all the stadiums. So I actually managed to tour Cardiff City Stadium, Swansea Stadium, Bristol Stadium. I, again, was the first person off of my own label that saw those places as great promotional places. So instead of going to like the little clubs to do promotional shows, I went straight to the stadiums and had like 30,000 people in one day, because I'd actually put the shows on half-time during the games.
So you would sing during the half-time break, yeah?
Yeah, and no one was doing it. So it's an opportunity I saw that was like, well, to get to 30,000 people in a day, I'm actually going to go straight to stadiums and put the half-time shows on. So I kind of started the half-time shows. And that's where they was like, okay, we can fill a stadium and then put half-time shows on. So that's what I was doing to actually get around. I was promoting all my music.
I mean, that's a massive thing, really, because if you think about, you mentioned playing at small clubs, you could do a tour of, say, I don't know, 10 clubs in London and have, what?
A couple of hundred
there each, and you're still getting nowhere near the amount of people that's actually in a crowd in a football stadium. So it's pretty clever.
I was getting to 30,000 in, half an hour.
Yeah, I mean, you only have to do one of those a week, really. One of those every
but that's
couple
what I
of
was
weeks.
doing, and that's how I was getting the press. That's how I was actually getting the sales, and generating. I mean, at the time I had a website, so that's the only place people could actually find out about me, because there was no social media. So the website was the beginning of everything. And I was getting 80,000 hits a week on my website from doing that. So I just saw it as, well, I don't want to do these little places. Like, I'm not going to get to many people. So I went direct to the football stadiums and toured the football stadiums.
Again, that's got to be to do with your mindset as well. I think like a lot
Crazy.
Well, no, I mean, it's setting your goals high, isn't it? You know, and I think that's what you need to do in this day and age, especially. I mean, back then it would have been of a massive benefit to you, because generally I think that from when I was playing in bands, it was, you know, you pick up some instruments, you play with your friends, you make a bit of noise, you eventually get some sort of song together, you get a few £100 to go and record a demo, and then you just send your demo out to whoever will listen to you, and not a lot comes from it. But that is, you know, it's a very smart move.
I think it's just, at the time, it was never desperation, but you look, when you've got more control over your career, you see more opportunities, and I think maybe that's the difference between being managed, and I didn't have management at the time either, so I was pretty much managing my whole career as well. But you get to see the opportunities rather than just be told this is what you're going to do. So I think back then it just seemed like a natural progression to go that way, and there was not really a lot of competition.
But that comes from with the experience of actually being in the industry and seeing the back end of it. I know I mentioned this to you before, but you have a far better view on how it all works, as opposed to someone who hasn't worked in the industry is trying to manage maybe a band. It's a bit like having a swimming coach who's never got in a pool. I suppose.
And I really think that is the only way I was able to do it, because I understood how to do it. I had taken on a press company, so they did, and it was based in Cardiff, and this press company were amazing, so they got me so much press from the story as well. So again, it does come down to that at that time you did know, because no one was doing it. These press companies had never really dealt with individual companies either, so as a person they'd always dealt with managers or record labels, but I was actually an individual going in through those doors in those meetings. This is what I want to do, I want you to say this, I need my stuff there. So I was actually dealing with them all rather than someone going in on my behalf. So this is why I say it's valid to understand your industry, what you're in. And that even applies to today, that you can, it's very easy today to set up your own record label. And I think that's the problem as well, though. It's too easy today.
I agree.
The platform is huge for you to get your stuff out there. Now you've got YouTube and Twitter, Instagram, you've got them all, but it's saturated as well.
Of course,
So there was nothing years ago. So if you came out, the press wanted your story because there was nobody else doing it. But today, everyone's doing it. So would I do it again today? No, because I probably wouldn't be able to find a place.
Right, okay.
Because I would just be lost among everyone else trying to do it. It's not a story anymore. I mean, if everyone's doing it, you've got nothing to really sell.
No, I think, and even the people who are doing it, a lot of their stories are made up rubbish anyway. I mean, you're right. I think the actual problem is with, and the pros and the cons of having social media, YouTube and places like that, is that you can reach millions of people. But there are millions of people trying to make the same reach as well. So,
and the story is all the same now. That's the difference. Exactly. Like everyone, because you hear it so much and it's a platform for it, everyone's story sounds exactly the same. So, I mean, I think years ago, it was much easier because you had to work to find your place. You had to put the work in. But you don't need to do that today, because you can sit in your bedroom and just release everything now. That's the difference. You don't need to go to college. You don't need to get on airplanes. You don't need to go and work in the music industry. You can find that on Google now. You can learn how to run a record label on Google. Whereas years ago, you couldn't do that. You had to physically go and do it to learn the industry. So I think that's the difference today, that it's saturated. And that's what I think is really difficult, trying to break through.
So when you'd had your label and you were promoting yourself and doing the stadiums and so on, how long were you doing that for?
Good. It went on for a while, a good few years I was doing it all, but that's when the opportunity started coming in then. So when I got asked to go to Spain and work on a big project in Spain, which I had to move to Spain because the project was so big. So it was to actually be the face of launching a brand new vodka, which is really ironic because I don't even drink. I don't actually drink at all. But it was, again, surrounding myself with business people. And this is probably why I'm in business today, because I just loved love learning about business. So yeah, I ended up working with some pretty influential Swedish people, who were also really crappy along the line as well. So as much as I learned from them, they had their downfalls as well.
So tell me who these people were.
Do I have to talk about
You
them?
don't. You don't. No, you don't have to say anything you don't want to on here. But
No, I mean, again, great connections. Their resume speaks for themselves. Like the producer actually was a producer for ABBA.
Right. Okay.
Who'd moved to Spain and set up his own record label and publishing company. But I mean, we're talking a proper label and publishing company. It wasn't just something he would decided to do. His his songs were on albums around the world, so we had sales of millions. And working with Leif, I learned a lot.
Good and bad, I'm guessing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's obviously just talking to someone before I came in, and they was asking about the Me Too. Like, did you ever experience it? That was probably some of my times that I can talk about the industry where, as a woman, I probably got pushed into that corner where it was quite uncomfortable. For me, it was, I mean, my friendship lasted for a long time with Leif until it had to come to an end for those very reasons. So I think I was very lucky. I think I've been very lucky for a long time in the industry to not be taken advantage of. But what I found out was the more you knew about the industry from, and this is not all men, but I felt like the more I grew as a business person in the industry, it actually became a problem for me.
What, the more that you actually got?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
So the more knowledge I gained became a problem for the men in the industry.
Right, okay.
Because unfortunately, they like it if you just say yes. And for me, it became a problem because I started to know my stuff in the industry, and I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't like that. It's, and a lot of them would be my own material I'd be working on as well. So you didn't get a say on your own material. I was like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. You're a woman. I was like, okay, that's not right. So I absolutely encountered that. And the more I gained knowledge and the more that I actually learned about the music industry, it became a problem for me.
Right, okay.
So yeah, that's
There's got to be some downsides, as there is with any profession, I think. But you know, were they the main negatives in working in the music industry? Was the fact that you were female, and it was because it was such a male-dominated industry at the time?
It's a massively male-dominated industry, but I do have to say as well that women can be as bad as men. So it's not really, I would never just say that men are a nightmare in the music industry. They're not. I got an awful lot of support from a lot of men that never wanted anything. They just genuinely wanted to help. Then on the other side, of course, I think like in any business, you are going to come across some of them that, some of my stories are like a bit insane. Like, want you to look on porn sites because they want you to look like those porn artists to promote yourself. And I was like, what? Like, that's... Yeah, and then if I didn't marry producers, they would never finish my albums for me. So, yeah, I've experienced some of those crazy stories that you do hear about. But on the flip side, I met some pretty amazing men as well who helped with not wanting anything. But, yeah, women and men are just as bad in the industry.
Well, I think the industry, especially today, is massively all about sex sells, doesn't it? I mean, you see some of the artists today that... I mean, I got children. I don't want my daughters looking at some of these artists, because they wear next to nothing. I don't think they promote a good image. But I think in terms of what tell me if I'm wrong in this, but I think you go from musician to businessman, and when you're working with musician, whether they're male or female, they're just happy to help because they want to make something, they want to create something. And as you go along that line to where it becomes more about the business, that's when, from my impressions anyway, that's when it becomes a bit more cutthroat.
Yeah, I agree with you on that because I actually was brought on board to run Leif's record label and publishing company. And that's when I actually discovered that he was doing me out of my own songs. So
How do you mean? Well, you've taken the rights, or?
Yeah, he took the rights to a lot of the songs that I wrote for him for the actual projects. My names were taken off absolutely everything. So it's because they just think an artist should have a place and they shouldn't know the industry, but unfortunately I knew the industry. So that's where you see the back end of it. That's when I got to discover, okay, well, you've stolen my publishing rights and there was nothing I could do about it.
Right.
because they were signed in the publishing company. So yeah, I mean, I absolutely saw the difference in just being an artist to then becoming a business artist.
Right.
The difference was massive. How people approached me and how they dealt with me. They didn't like me in the industry. I shouldn't. And many a times I was told, no, just sit back. You shouldn't have an opinion on it. Many a times.
Do you think it's like that now? Or do you think that's a dated way of dealing with it?
I mean, that was not that long ago.
ago.
I mean, we're only
Okay.
talking about 5 years ago, really,
Right,
with
okay.
Leif, because I was working on projects with him. So we're not going back a long time. I think the difference is social media is growing massively every day.
Yeah.
It doesn't require you to have to really know the industry anymore.
No.
That's the thing. So maybe it's old-fashioned in the sense that not everyone wants to know the industry. They now can just release through a platform and just get their royalties or see their sales. They don't really have to run a proper sturdy label or publishing company.
No.
It's made easier in that sense. But I think to grow and to be able to make a career in the industry, you probably do have to know that.
Well, there's a difference nowadays, I think, between people wanting a career in music
Yep.
and wanting the fame.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
so many people are chasing the fame. We talked about it before with
Yep.
shows like, obviously, the General X Factor and things
Yeah.
like that. I mean, it's really all about image, how much you can sell. And I mean, for a lot of these people, it's about having the attention, I
Yep.
think.
Yeah, so true. It
Well, I
is.
think you get lost in what's really about them, which is the music, I think.
Yeah, and like, we have spoken about it, and that's what I said to you, that I think as well, something that woke me up when those shows started to air was, if you cannot make it on that platform, and every single week you're on an international platform as well,
Yeah.
mind, especially because it was put onto YouTube and everyone around the world gets to see you now. If you can't make it off that platform, I don't know how you're going to make it today.
Yeah.
And it's not that there was not great talent. There was
Yeah.
some incredible talent on those shows, but they never got anywhere. Some of them used to come back and I know many of them on these shows, and they just go back around singing social clubs and pubs because they were known as rejects, which it fascinates me, this industry, because you can have massive exposure and it's still not enough.
Yeah.
So I think the industry's changed in that sense. It's too saturated with music shows, too saturated with platforms to release off. And I think it's destroying the industry.
Well, I mean, look at The Voice. I've never seen anybody who's won
Nope.
The Voice anywhere near the
Can't tell
charts
you
or
one
anything
person
like
that's
that.
won
No,
it. No,
you can't
I
at all.
don't know a name. But,
It's sad, I think, because it gives a fake hand to people who think, well, we're
Yeah.
going to help you into this area, and they
Absolutely.
actually just let them go before they've even got to
Well,
an-
I was
real
out on the
platform.
weekend and a young boy said to me, I want to go on The Voice. I want to become famous. I want to go
Yeah.
on The Voice. And that's their way of getting, and I said, so what have you actually done? Like, what are you doing to become a singer? Nothing. And I was like, so you just want to go straight onto The Voice
Yeah.
and just become a singer? And I was like, it really shouldn't work that way. Like, you should be out, building your craft, doing what you need to do, finding yourself as an artist. And then fair enough, you want to go on The Voice, absolutely. But you can't just go directly to these shows and think that's how you get in. Like,
No.
that's not a singer to me. Like, work in the industry, not record labels or publishing, but sing, gig. You
Yeah.
know, even if it's in pubs and clubs, it's still working.
Yeah.
It's earning money, and
Exactly.
it's building a little fan base. It's giving you the confidence to get on stage. But you're right, majority of people just want to be famous today.
And that's it. See, you talk about that boy who wants to go on there. I don't think does he really want to be a musician, an artist, or does he want to be someone who's just got a ton of attention from all
Yeah.
these people and make a load of money?
Yeah.
I think it's probably the latter. But I don't blame him for that. I think that's just the way the industry is sort of developed these days because of those shows that really promote this. This is a chance, a golden ticket of a lifetime to really make it in a business. And I think the realities behind it all are false. But
Yeah.
I
I don't know.
well, I mean, it's I don't think they're ever going to go away anytime soon. But
No, I don't think so, and it probably will grow into
Yeah.
another one,
Yeah.
and more, and it'll never stop. I mean, again, it's just the way the industry's going. But yeah, I kind of feel relieved I'm out of it.
So let's talk about how it sort of you came to be coming out of it then. So you were in London, you were doing your label, and you were still gigging.
Well, I mean,
a fair
at
bit.
that time, I'd gone to Spain as well. I was
Yeah.
working in Sweden.
Right. Okay.
then I was in Nashville, still back and forth LA, but what had happened, so I was 29, and obviously doing all this stuff, and at my time that I was in Spain, I'd met a fantastic bass player who had given me the opportunity to then become an opening act for the Faces.
Okay.
So I was back in London, and I was, at that time, I wasn't feeling great. I developed a cough, and it was really interfering with what I was doing. So I turned 30, so that was in the summer. We were rehearsing, ready to open for them. My birthday was in the November, so by the November, I was not great at all. And then come the January, I turned 30 and my body just completely gave way on me.
So it started off with a cough.
Yeah,
right?
and a little niggle in my arm, a little numb pain in my left arm.
And then when you say your body gave up on you, what do you mean by that?
I actually was paralyzed for a whole year. So
a whole year?
For a whole year.
Wow.
My left arm went into like a sling position.
Okay.
And would not move out to that position for a whole year. It was paralyzed in that position. Yeah.
When did it just happen?
It just happened.
On stage, or was it before you went on stage? Or?
This was after. So I had a gig. It was over Christmas. I was actually gigging, and I could feel my arm was really heavy.
Right.
Like maybe I've just picked equipment up or I've strained it. That was the December. So it was a couple of weeks later, and it was getting heavier and heavier. And yeah, by the January, it just completely moved into a sling position and stuck for a whole year. And my shoulder was dislocated at the same time, so my shoulder was out of position as well.
Well, you knew that though, yeah?
Yeah, I was in straight to the hospital for physio, but there's nothing they could do for me. They just didn't know why it was in that position.
So they had no idea.
No.
Why you became paralyzed? Did they ever find out? Did you ever find out about?
3 years later.
Okay, what'd they say?
When I went for a scan at the hospital in Neville Hall, and they did my spine, and I developed scoliosis. So from being deaf on the one side and overusing the left side of my body, my whole thoracic completely tilted. Right. So I developed scoliosis. My spine had curved. Oh God, I keep hitting this mic.
Don't worry
Sorry.
about it. Don't worry about it.
My spine had curved, and that's the positioning of my shoulder had moved completely as well. So they just had years and years of being on stage. And trying to listen, I would always put my head forward because I don't hear in stereo, so I'd always tilt my head to try and hear the audience and the music. Right. So it was bad posture because of my hearing, and my body had just got to a point where it just couldn't take any more.
So you'd stopped singing then, I'm guessing, at that point?
I lost my voice. I completely lost my stamina. My breathing had gone. I had no control over my body. It was too painful to actually sing. I think I cried for 2 years solid, the pain, if anything. But yeah, I mean, overnight, literally, I lost my independence. Any jobs I had in place, I couldn't do. I couldn't fulfill any of them. And I think that is where I realized how much of a perfectionist I was, because I didn't know how to deal with what was going on with me, because again, being that tunnel visioned person, that I was just doing absolutely everything that I knew, the loss of control, it was huge actually.
It's crazy to think about that it was something that you feel like you've probably been destined to do in a way, maybe singing.
Yeah, man, I was living a pretty incredible life, you know. I mean, being in Spain and having musicians flown from all over the world to lead the show that I was doing. So I was working with a great music promoter at that time as well. Yeah. So we were doing incredible shows. But yeah, overnight it completely went, and there was nothing I could do.
How did you mentally cope with that? Because you were doing music you constantly. I mean, it was, as you say, you had the tunnel vision for it
every single day,
and all of a sudden, like a switch, it just stopped. And what was that like to deal with?
Really difficult. Really difficult. I mean, for the first couple of weeks, it was the pain. So I was having to deal with the pain. But then as time went on, and constantly at the doctors, constantly at the hospital, and being told, you know, you're going to have to take time off, you kind of don't say that to a musician, because it's your money. Like, what else are you going to do? Like, how are you going to pay your bills? How are you going to do anything? So that's when it set in. That's when it was an absolute worry for me.
Yeah.
But we're 9 years down the line, and I'm still at the hospital next week. So
Really?
9 years, yeah.
Did you ever get back into singing after that initial?
Well, I probably singing was off the cards for 6 years, so I could not physically perform, because at the time then my intercostal muscles were pulling at my ribs.
Was that because you were leaning again?
No, and I wasn't singing, so I could not physically sing.
Right.
I did lose my voice. So I pretty much had to retrain myself to sing because everything went.
Right.
I had no stamina, so I would jump around in the kitchen to, I think it was Jason Derulo, just to try and get my breathing back.
Right.
So yeah, I had to retrain myself. So it took me a whole year to retrain my voice.
Yeah.
To get any form of breathing technique back as well. Because I had none. I could not sing no more than one song. My arm would go back into that sling position and just cramp again. And then I'd have to have massages to release me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I didn't sing, but I was during that time is when I learned to produce. Because I didn't want to not be in music, but I knew I couldn't perform anymore.
Yeah.
So that's when I learned to produce through YouTube.
Okay, so you focused on that then, and that's what led to the SoundCloud recordings.
Yeah, because that's songs that I think at that time I just needed to get out. It wasn't the music that I was actually using. It was what I was learning to write and sing and produce. And that's the music that you've listened to when I was probably at my worst when I was doing that, because I was paralyzed. I wasn't able to move. I recorded that whole album with one arm. And it probably took me months and months because I couldn't really sing. So it was I can't listen to them because I hear myself ill. Like, I actually hear my voice nothing like what I sounded like, because I can hear that I was not well when I did those songs. So I thought I had to completely change my whole career. So I started to train as a counselling psychologist.
Right. Okay. Well, it's different. It's a bit of a jump, yeah.
But I mean, so university with psychology, and I was in college doing counselling, and they just joined up, and it was through the counselling that I actually trained myself back on stage.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was at that time that anything that was going on with me, I released.
Right.
Obviously, training to become a counsellor, you have to do the role play.
Yeah, sure.
And I was letting out anything that I was feeling during those role play sessions, until I woke up one morning and I said, I'm going to get myself back on stage.
Right.
So that's when I was pretty much dancing around to Jason Derulo for like a whole year, retraining myself. And I did. I got myself. I only had another 2 years because it was just so painful. But
was it still hurt to sing?
Even to this day.
Right,
That's why I had to fully retire, because even to this day, performing, I mean, I'd come off stage, not being able to move my arm, spasms, like, I mean, the amount of ECGs I've had within the last 2 years because of the spasms around the heart. It's just, I don't expand enough anymore to be able to sing. So I get a lot of spasms in my body now. So it was on doctor's orders. They actually said, okay, I think it's time that you let go and walk away. Otherwise, by the age of 40, you'll be paralyzed.
Wow, was that the warning? Yeah,
that was the warning.
Goodness me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sad. It's so sad that something you love so much and such a massive part of it was causing you so much pain.
Yeah.
And eventually,
and to be honest, a lot of people never saw it. That's the thing, because it was an internal problem.
Yeah.
People never saw it until they would see me singing, and then I'd scream because the spasms in the middle of a song would just shoot so powerful that my mum, she'd be like, you can't do this anymore, Claire. You're just in so much pain. So I used to hide it quite a lot. Again, probably like my deafness.
Right.
I just never saw them as problems. I just wanted to get on with things until, the pain was unbearable, and I had no life because of the pain. And that's when I realized, okay, you know what? You need to stop now. I've had amazing times. I've done some amazing things, and I just had to appreciate what I'd done. But I think if anything, I just learned that when I got myself back on the stage, I learned to appreciate music for just being able to do it.
Yeah.
I didn't have any expectations. I just got back out gigging. So I kind of left music loving music, not hating it.
Yeah.
So I forgot about everything that, the bad side of the industry. And I just appreciated being able to sing. And I think that's maybe how I walked away, because I loved it, rather than seeing it as like, it's done this to me. What am I going to do?
Yeah, and that's quite a good thing, I think. It's a good separation, effectively, then, isn't it? I mean, you don't want would never want to leave hating the industry or hating music.
And I don't.
No.
I mean, it's a fantastic industry, and it'll always be an amazing industry. It's just, if you get into the industry, you just see it for what it is. And unfortunately, I had massive exposure for what it was.
So if people are listening and are musicians and they're trying to make it in the industry, what would be your best bit of advice? And you can't say don't do it, right? You've got to do something else,
I will never tell somebody not to do it.
Yeah.
It's their own, if you want to be in music, absolutely. But I would say have a balance in your life.
Yeah.
That, because there's every chance you can make it as much as you can't.
Yeah.
And I think it's the healthy mentality that nothing is ever guaranteed. But I didn't go in with that mentality. I went in forcing myself to be in this industry. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to work with this person. So I would say to anybody, just go in with it. Like, mentality is everything. So just say, well, I'm going to enjoy it for what it is. If I don't get anywhere, I don't. It's not the end of the world. And I'm kind of mentoring a young girl with her own music school at the moment. And that's exactly what I'm saying. What I'm trying to, say to her, that you're responsible educating these young kids and youngsters coming into the industry.
Yeah.
And I wish I had that when I was younger, that it's not the be all and end all, that, you can make it as much as you're not going to make it. And that's okay. Yeah. So I think that, for me, is vital, that it's okay if you don't get what you want to get. It's not the end of the world. And I'm kind of living proof, because I've changed my life completely. I couldn't be happier. So I've walked away from music with no regrets of being in music.
No.
I mean, I don't know if I do it again, but
do you miss it? Do you miss singing? Because it was such a massive part of your life, and for it to be able to not do it then.
If I'm being honest with you, I don't miss the person I was.
Right. Okay.
And that, for me, is that I can walk away, because now I'm who I want to be.
Right.
I didn't like who I was and what music made me. I think I was just far too controlled. And I think, again, it's the expectations. If you want to be something, it's the pressures you put on yourself.
Yeah, sure.
And I've walked away, and I have a life now. Like, I actually can go out and get drunk and watch the rugby. And, if I want to scream, I can scream. I wouldn't allow myself to do that, because I was letting other people down. If my voice wasn't on form, if I was with a band, I was letting the band down. If I was working for a promoter, I was letting the promoter down.
Yeah.
I don't have those pressures anymore, and that's what I now like. That I can get up in the morning and I don't have to test if my voice is okay. If I don't have a voice, it's fine.
Yeah.
Like my office room, I can sit in my office room, and if someone's got a cold, I'm fine. But those things I would never have exposed myself to. So yeah, I think maybe I probably am far too much for the industry. I saw it as a job that I needed to be great at, whereas maybe other people see it just as a hobby. And I wish I had that mentality sometimes.
Do you think you would have gone as far as you did, though, if you just thought it was a hobby? That's the difference, isn't it? It's all about drive. It's all about mindset. And I think that...
Yeah, and I probably had that full throttle, actually. I mean, I didn't go into it half-hearted at all.
I mean, even down to the point you were saying about your meals, right? You were eating certain things that had more water. Was that right? Was that right? Yeah,
absolutely. So, yeah, I would... over 2 liters a day. I would make sure that I was drinking. I made my own meals to make sure they were high in water content.
I mean, that's extreme from what I can see.
But then that's why sometimes I think I got to the places I got to. Because I got to work with some incredible people for those very reasons, that I always made sure I was 100% ready. So yeah, I mean, like we spoke about, I could probably release a cookbook for singers because I've got the meals.
Well, you should do. I think it's great. I mean, to me, it's so committed. You're right, though. I think you have to be to be different, to be seen, and to stand out and have that light shining on you. You have to go that extra distance, I think.
Yeah, but sometimes it's at a sacrifice as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's when I joke that I'm 39 and I'm not married and I don't have babies, and it is because I committed myself so much
Yeah,
to it. So
yeah.
I suppose, I know I'm only 39 and I feel like I'm starting my life now, though. That's
Right,
the
okay,
thing. I only feel like now I'm starting my life, but I feel really happy. Like I
Good,
feel like
good.
I've got some amazing memories. I've done some incredible things, but there's also a time when I kind of just want to be normal now.
Yeah.
Not chase those dreams all the time. Like I love coming to ICE every single day and sitting at my desk and hearing normal stories, like just a normal weekend where I've been out for the rugby. Never ever had that life. Never had it. I was constantly gigging, constantly on planes. So yeah, I think that's what was missing out of my life.
And I think it's important now because happiness is the key, isn't it? Because
Absolutely.
you can have all these. We talk about people wanting fame. You can have all this fame and all this money, but if you're really not happy, is it really worth it?
And to be honest, I've been in those places. I've seen the amazing things. They're not happy. Even people at the top, they're not happy. It doesn't buy you happiness because sometimes there's no stability with it.
Yeah.
You're constantly everywhere. So yeah, for the first time in my life, I actually might have walked away from the industry, but yeah, it's the happiest I've ever been. And I'm actually using my brain. I realised I had a brain.
You obviously must have had some kind of brain to do what you were doing. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing at ICE then, because this is how we met, obviously, is doing Welsh ICE. So tell us what you're doing now.
Wow. Okay. I still kind of work within publishing.
Okay.
I'm just not music publishing. I'm book publishing.
All right. Okay.
And the only reason it came about was my younger sister. So I'm one of 4 girls. And my baby sister lives in Australia. And back last year, oh goodness, no. Well, we were actually 2020 now. So November 2018, my sister called me and said my niece, who was 2.5 at the time, was struggling with her ABC. She was trying to learn it. So me being me, and I love being an auntie. It's like, for me, it's one of the best things. I decided I was actually going to make her a book.
Okay.
I had no idea how I was going to do it. I just knew I was going to do it. So the connection, every time Mia called, she was so focused on my dog. That was the only time she ever phoned to see my dog.
Right.
So I decided to design my dog and the book and bring it together. And I called it Curious Lola. And for some weird reason, I always said to my dog, I'm going to write books about you. And I always used to joke. And it actually has come true. So I did the first book for Mia and just found it was something I absolutely loved doing.
Yeah.
And I'm now 15 books later.
Right,
So
okay.
I've now got 15 Curious Lola children's educational books. So when I decided to come to ICE because I was working in the bedroom, so I knew that I was going to be finishing music. And I didn't want to put myself in the bedroom, no connections, I was fully by myself. So I came, I think it must be the January or the February, and I was adamant I was getting myself into this workspace because it was nothing I'd ever known, working every day in an office environment because you'd be on the road all the time or in your studio. And I just knew it was the next step that I needed to take. So I managed to get a place here. And I put myself in the courtyard suite. So I knew I had a place every single day, could take my stuff in there. Yeah, and it's been the best decision because I managed to get onto an accelerator course.
Right.
That tested me completely. It tested me as a person, as a business person, and if I was capable of doing it. And what I didn't realize during my time at ICE was I was transitioning out of the old Clare into the new Clare. So I was letting go of being a singer and moving into just a full-time business person and creative person. So I cried for most of my time in ICE. The good first 6-7 months, I was crying all the time, and I didn't know why, but it was because I was transitioning. Yeah. But it had nothing to do with the place. It had nothing to do with the people because they were incredible here. I mean, you know that yourself. Yeah. But through the accelerator, it was when I actually knew, right, this is what I want to do, and I've let go of music in order to move forward. I had to let go of music. So I decided to set up a community interest company, which now I am leaving ICE, not because it's not a great place, but because I'm expanding quite quickly. where I'm bringing volunteers on board. It's actually becoming an accredited centre as well. So for all the volunteers that come on board, we actually accredit them for their services, which helps to build the books and educational boxes for children from deprived backgrounds.
Right, okay.
And that, again, was just through lots of people here helping as well, and me discovering that, you know, I wanted to help make a difference. I didn't want to just build a company that was about me.
Yeah.
I actually love being in the background and just being a creative. But yeah, I've realized business is what I absolutely love to do. But yeah, I mean, I have to give it to a lot of people here that they absolutely have been incredible getting me to that place.
You know, I mean, who, you know, doing the text behind the podcast. I mean, we've been here a month, and it's just the response
it's amazing.
to us. Everybody's just so friendly, and it's such a cracking place to be, and everybody just wants to help, which is amazing. And people here are, I think, deep down creative people, and I
Absolutely.
think that's
I think what I love about this place is no one expects you to be like at the top all the time.
Yeah.
They're there if, you know, I mean, no business is going to run smooth, and that happened with me during, you know, the middle of it. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, am I going this way? Am I going this way? And everyone says it's okay to not know what you're doing. So I think being in this environment got me through that part of the business. And yeah, so I'm going to go virtual. I don't want to leave this place.
Yeah.
I absolutely love this place, but I've just kind of outgrown it for my business now, and that's the only reason I'm actually leaving. But I'm happy that I'm leaving because my business is growing.
And that's key, isn't it? I think
Absolutely.
that's key. You know, it's not that you're leaving because you don't want to be here. It's that you
No.
know, it's getting big, and you know, you've got to move to a different
Well, it's
space.
growing, and I've actually grown. So yeah. I think, you know, I mean, music taught me so much.
Yeah.
It absolutely built me. And I think it built me in the right way. Now I've walked away from it. Like I'm sitting here talking to you today.
Yeah.
So I'm never going to leave it.
No.
It's always a part of me.
Yeah.
But it's what I used to be. It's not who I am anymore.
No.
Like I feel like I've let go, and I'm happy to let go. And I think not a lot of people get to do that.
No.
I don't think there's a lot of people that never leave the industry, and they're still trying to make it in their 50s, in their 60s. And I just didn't want to be that person.
No.
I think I went out when I felt great about actually leaving. Okay, I didn't have a choice essentially, but I knew it was my time. And I walked away, and I was like, yeah, I'm happy to walk away with great memories. But yeah, I mean, I'll always help if anyone needs any help in the industry. I'm absolutely more than happy to help, because I think I can come from both sides, which is, as much as I love the industry, I also see it for what it is as well. And I'll never paint it as an incredible industry. I don't know if any industry is incredible, but it's, I think you just have to be realistic as well, that it's a job.
Well, I think everything has its highs and lows, doesn't it? Regardless of how much success you have, there's always going to be lows to that success, you know. So look, do you want to tell people about any social? We can contact you for your business or anything like that, so we can.
Yeah, so it's the Curious Lola Literacy Project, community interest company. Yeah, all the social media is going up. So within the next week, absolutely everything will be up and running.
Cool,
And we're trying to make the contacts with all the volunteers and stuff as well. And we will be moving premises. So yeah, it's crazy busy, but it's all good. But it's Curious Lola.
Yeah, cool. All right, that's great. Well, look, thanks so much for coming on and
Thank
sharing
you for
our
having
story.
me. I don't know if it's any
such,
good.
No. I don't think there's many people that truly know what it's like, who've actually truly been in it, because I think they tend to gravitate towards the cities, as you did anyway.
Yeah.
And obviously Hollywood or Spain and Sweden and so
I don't
on.
know if people are as crazy as me, though.
Well, there's nothing wrong with being a bit crazy.
I don't know about that.
No. All right. Well, look, Claire, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for watching.
Thanks. You. Bye.